Hello Union Club members. Very exciting episode today on our YouTube channel. We are going to be working with one of my absolute favorite ingredients of all time, and that's rhubarb. Rhubarb to me signifies the start of spring, and I know once I see rhubarb, next I'm going to see asparagus, morel mushrooms, fava beans, and best of all, the summer weather here on Vancouver Island. William and I took a drive out to the Sandwich Peninsula today to visit Furbank Farms on Island View Road, and we found some of the nicest rhubarb I have ever seen. We're going to be working that into a beautiful pie with a lattice crust today, and I'm going to show you step by step how to get it done. Let's get started. All right, everybody, let's get started on our pie crust. This is one of the easiest pastry doughs that you can make, and all we need for it are these 5 ingredients. We've got 3 cups of all-purpose flour, or whatever flour you want to use. I was fortunate enough today to find some Vancouver Island grown wheat that had been milled into flour out on the Sandwich Peninsula. So I'm using about half and half just to give it a unique kind of different flavor. I've got a teaspoon of salt, 4 tablespoons of granulated sugar, and I've got a cup and a quarter of unsalted butter. You can use either butter, you can use shortening or lard. Probably gonna get a little bit flakier of a crust using a shortening or a lard, but I find the unsalted butter just has a better flavor, and honestly, who doesn't like butter? All right, so let's get started. We're gonna take our food processor here, and this is the best way that you can make a pastry dough or sweet dough for a pie crust like this, because it allows you to not handle it as much. For this, we really want to have cold butter. Very, very important to help us get that pie crust as flaky as we possibly can. So we're gonna use the food processor to help cut in the butter so we don't have to work it with our hands. So I'm just gonna go ahead and add in the flours into the container here. We're gonna add our salt. We're gonna add our sugar. Okay. Just gonna put the lid on and buzz that up so we can get it all incorporated together. A couple buzzes here just to get all mixed up. There we go. Everything's nice and incorporated in here now. Now we're gonna work in our butter. All right, now we've got all of our butter in the food processor here. We're gonna use the pulse button on this just to start bringing the dough together. We don't wanna blend it too much. What we're really looking for is for the dough to start forming almost like a mealy texture, like powdered Parmesan that you would get at the store, which by the way, you should never eat. It's awful. So let's get going here. All right, all our butter is cut in there. We're gonna add the last ingredient. We've got about 15 tablespoons of ice-cold water here, and we're gonna start adding that to this, but only about 2 tablespoons at a time. The trick to this is we wanna add as little water as we can possible. All right, so I'm just gonna pull out the plug on this. With it running, all right, that looks perfect. It's coming together. I'm gonna take this out, dump it on my cutting board, and start bringing it together. All right, this looks perfect. It's kind of starting to hold together, kind of clumpy, not wet, kind of moist. Perfect for us to start bringing this dough together. I'm just gonna use my hands really gently. I don't wanna knead it too much because we don't really wanna develop a lot of gluten in this. And we're just gonna kind of bring it together in a dough, kind of kneading it, but not kneading it. We have our dough brought together here. It's starting to hold its shape. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this in plastic, and I'm gonna let it rest in the refrigerator for about an hour. This is just gonna help everything hydrate, all that moisture spread out through the flour, and make sure everything is nice and even and ready for us to roll out for our dough. All right, everybody, our pie dough is ready to work with. It has been in the refrigerator for a little over an hour. The dough is fully hydrated and ready to work with. We're gonna do this right on the countertop with our rolling pin, and we're gonna bring it down to about 1/8 of an inch. We're gonna put a little bit of flour on the counter to help it not stick. Let's go ahead and get this ready. All right, so what I've done is I've flattened down our dough, trying to keep it as much in a shape of a circle as possible. And then I'm gonna start working this outwards, one push at a time, spinning it about a quarter rotation as we go, just to help keep that circular shape for when it goes into our pie dough. All right, so I've got my crust rolled out to the thickness that I want, and I've laid it into my baking dish, just like so. I've left a little bit of extra over the top, so when I put on my lattice crust, I have something to roll up and crimp into shape. Let's get started on the top. All right, everybody, now that we've got our pie crust made and it's resting in the fridge, we're gonna go ahead and get started on our filling. So in this bowl, I've already got 3½ cups of chopped fresh strawberries and 3½ cups of fresh rhubarb that we picked up on the Sandwich Peninsula today. To this bowl, we're gonna add 1/2 cup of granulated sugar, 1/2 cup of brown sugar, the zest of 1 fresh lemon, teaspoon of freshly grated cinnamon, tablespoon of freshly grated ginger root, and 1/4 cup of cornstarch just to help thicken things up. All of these ingredients can go into the bowl at the same time. We're gonna give these a light toss together just to marry them all together. And then this is gonna go into our pie crust. All right, we're ready to assemble our pie. I've got my crust rolled out into my baking dish. I've got my top here that I'm gonna cut into my lattice crust, and I've got my filling. So let's go ahead and start trimming this into the ribbons. The lattice crust is kind of what's gonna give it that traditional weavy pattern texture to the top of it. You don't have to do it if you want. You could roll this out into a simple circle and lay that over top and it would be just fine. But I feel like doing something a little bit extra special today. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna cut these strips about 3/4 of an inch, and I'm gonna lay them out over my pattern. All right, so what I've done here is I've peeled back the 2nd, 4th, and 6th straps and laid my cross pattern across. Now I'm gonna lift up the 1st, the 3rd, and the 5th, and put my next row in. Now you can go ahead and lay those back down very carefully. Just like that. Now you're gonna repeat this all the way to the end of the pie, alternating between 2, 4, and 6, and then switching to 1, 3, and 5 until your pie is complete. I finished my lattice crust here on my pie, and I'm gonna go ahead and crimp over those edges. So I'm gonna work in a clockwise pattern. I'm just gonna fold those down just like so and roll them over on themselves just to seal them up. Gone ahead and I've crimped my edges, and this pie is ready for its final couple of steps, and we're gonna give this a nice coating of an egg wash. So this is gonna help give the pie a little bit of gloss, and we're just gonna coat the top in 2 beaten eggs that we've applied with a silicone brush. We're gonna finish that with a bit dusting of a coarse granulated sugar just to give it an extra little texture on top and a little bit of sheen. Now our pie is fully coated in its egg wash that we've given it. This is gonna go into a 400-degree oven for about 25 minutes, and then we're gonna turn it down to about 350, and it's gonna continue to bake for about an hour to hour and 20 minutes until the top is golden brown and the filling has had a chance to thicken. One final thing before it goes in the oven, I'm gonna give it a healthy dose of coarse sugar over top, just like this, to give it a finishing little garnish. Sugar is gonna start to caramelize, and it's gonna give it a nice little crunchy little texture to the top. All right, everybody, thanks for staying tuned. We have moved on from rosé to red wine because the Joie Rosé was empty and I needed to keep going. Our pie has finally come out of the oven. It's been in there for about an hour and 20 minutes. The crust on top is looking golden brown. The sugar looks nice and caramelized, and that rhubarb and strawberry liquid is just oozing out of the pores. I can't wait for this to cool down so I can dive into it. I hope everybody enjoyed this video and is staying at home, staying safe, staying healthy, and enjoying some beautiful wine. I have a bunch of trim left over that I'm going to turn into a syrup later on. Follow this afterwards for the recipe. I'm going to take that over to William at the club, and he's going to whip us up a beautiful Sanis rhubarb inspired cocktail. I hope you all enjoy it. Thanks so much for joining us, and have a great night.